Meet Vasily Arkhipov. He was born a peasant in the Soviet Union, served in World War II on a minesweeper, and single-handedly averted nuclear war. Yes, he stopped a nuclear war from happening and quite literally saved the entire world from utter destruction. How did this man, not even connected to politics at all, stop a nuclear war? Vasily Alexandrovich Arkhipov. He was born on January 30th, 1926 in Staraya Kupovna, a small town about 14 miles east of Moscow. His parents were peasants and his high school education was interrupted by World War II. His service wasn't for long, however. He fought in the Soviet Navy against Japan. The Soviet Union only joined the war against Japan on August 9th, 1945, and the day Japan announced its intent to surrender was only 6 days later, and the actual surrender was less than a month later. During his time in the war, he served on a minesweeper, which is a type of ship that clears water from mines or underwater bombs. He then finished his schooling, and then in 1947, after graduating, he joined the Soviet Navy, working with submarines. Almost 15 years later came the Soviet submarine K-19. It was the first nuclear submarine that the Soviet Union built, and what a submarine it was. First, 10 people died during the construction of the K-19. Then, when the sub was being launched, the ceremonial champagne bottle smashed against the stern, or back of the ship, failed to smash and bounced off of the hull, which was coated in rubber. This is viewed by many sailors to be unlucky. Then, during sea trials, one of the compartments flooded with water and the rubber on the hull fell right off. On April 30th, 1961, the ship was commissioned and Arkhipov was the deputy commander of the ship, or second in command. The K-19 had its maiden voyage on July 4th, 1961. Remember, this sub is nuclear-powered. Since it's nuclear-powered, the nuclear reactor propelling the sub needs coolant, otherwise it'll overheat and cause a nuclear meltdown. If the sub was in the ocean when a nuclear meltdown happened, it would have caused much of the fish and wildlife in the area to become contaminated, poisoning the ecosystem. Enough of hypotheticals, back to the K-19. The problem with the K-19, however, is that the pipes that were supposed to be carrying the coolant to the reactor were broken. The reactor reached temperatures of almost 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, or over 800 degrees Celsius. If the crew did nothing, the sub would go kablooey, kill everyone on board, and cause that nuclear meltdown you heard about earlier. The head of the sub, Nikolai Zateyev, ordered the engineers to physically attach a pipe with cold water to the reactor to prevent the meltdown from happening. The engineers did so, however, by doing so, they were exposed to massive amounts of radiation. All 7 engineers died from the radiation poisoning within a month. Other officers, including Arkhipov, received smaller doses of radiation. This radiation would likely cause the kidney cancer that Arkhipov would die of in 37 years. Arkhipov, for his role in the incident, gained a positive reputation for keeping a cool head in the face of disaster. This would give him leverage in preventing a nuclear war later. A year after the K-19 incident, in 1962, Arkhipov was designated as second in command of the Soviet sub B-59. This one wasn't nuclear, it ran on diesel. On October 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the B-59 was sent to Cuba. On this trip, the B-59 had 3 officers on board: Arkhipov, the captain Valentin Savitsky, and the political officer Ivan Maslenikov. This sub, however, wasn't just any old submarine. No, this sub had nuclear weapons. So, back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. The missile crisis, put simply, was when the Soviet Union sent nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles to Cuba, where they could reach the American homeland. The United States didn't like this one bit. They thought that the missiles on Cuba were an offensive measure, while Castro and Khrushchev, the leaders of Cuba and the Soviet Union, said that they were purely a defensive measure. The United States didn't believe them, and Kennedy, the President of the United States at the time, ordered a naval blockade around Cuba to keep any other missiles or military supplies from being sent to Cuba. The B-59, the sub that Arkhipov was in, tried to get in through the blockade. However, the sub got caught by 11 destroyers and 1 aircraft carrier. The destroyers dropped explosives to force the submarine to surface. But wait, since the submarine was underwater for days, they had no information about how the situation was on the surface. The captain thought that the explosives to force the submarine to surface were actually bombs meant to destroy the sub. He wanted to send a nuclear missile at the ships. However, to do so, he needed the consent of all 3 officers on board. The captain Savitsky and the political officer Maslenikov both voted yes to the launch. Arkhipov? He said no. Yes, that's right. Vasily Arkhipov was the one man who could have stopped a nuke being sent at American ships. And he did. He single-handedly stopped a nuclear war. What would have happened if the nuke was sent? Well, the US has a policy of retaliation only, which means that they'll send nukes only if the other side did so first. If Arkhipov allowed the nuke to be sent, the US undoubtedly would have fired back with their nuclear missiles, and then the Soviets would have fired back with more missiles, leading to a nuclear war. But Arkhipov didn't, In the Third World War, this one nuclear, was averted. Vasily Arkhipov quite literally saved the world. At the time, however, the submarine was quite low on fuel, and so the submarine was forced to surface and return to the Soviet Union. When he returned, he was met with contempt. One Soviet admiral said, instead of surfacing, that it would have been better if you'd gone down with your ship. The Cuban Missile Crisis eventually ended when the Soviet Union agreed to remove missiles from Cuba if the US removed missiles from Turkey, which they did. Arkhipov continued serving in the Soviet Navy, reaching the rank of Vice Admiral, the equivalent of a 3-star general, before retiring in the mid-1980s. He died in 1998 at the age of 72 from kidney cancer likely caused by radiation exposure in the sub K-19. So, that's the story of the man who quite literally saved the world. If you liked the video, then be sure to subscribe and like. If you didn't like the video, then press the dislike button twice, and then press the like button. Thank you for watching Explained. New videos every other Friday.